All right, David, what's the gem, brother? What's up?
All
What's
right.
up? Let's do the gem, and then we'll get to the first half of our conversation with Noam Chomsky.
Yeah. Well, on another subject that our good comrade and friend Charlie Kirk has been getting wrong for, pretty much his whole existence, but specifically over the past couple of weeks, is this whole Trump recovery and the so-called, revival of the stock market and the Trump surge that we're seeing right now. Now, Gore Vidal has this really wonderful line where he called the United States of amnesia. And when it comes to the financial community, you really have to say that it counts like double, because we're going through another massive moment of like completely uncalculated and almost baseless exuberance that we've seen. So everyone's been talking a lot about how they've seen, the stock market, rise, and then it'll trickle back down and then rise again. And everyone's like, what's going on? And they're coming up with all these stories. Primarily Trump has been focusing on the fact that there were some good jobs numbers in the most recent job report, and the fact that retail sales were higher than expected from the last government statistics. Now, just really quick on the jobs numbers that everyone's fixated on, let's not forget how many jobs were lost since this coronavirus crisis has started. I mean, we haven't seen anything on this scale, since the Great Depression. And even this most recent jobs report that everyone was fixated on, even the Bureau of even the government statistics have been saying that, like, we think that a lot of these might come from misclassifications, because a lot of people don't know how to classify their workers in the context of coronavirus, people who they've basically laid off, but they've said, when things get normal, we'll give you your job back. So a lot of those workers have been misclassified. And the EPI estimates that the actual unemployment rate that we're seeing in the United States is like 19.7%. Which is like historic, depression level, crisis. And it's something that we're all experiencing and feeling around us, which is why people look, with such shock towards these stock market numbers. And, there's a couple of reasons why that's happening. And the first one, which is something that a lot of people understand now, but I think it's important that we understand that materially and not just as a slogan, is that, the stock market doesn't really measure the economy, right? The stock market is a way that people make money. And in some like traditional ways, it used to be a way to sort of was a good barometer of like the feelings of the bourgeoisie. And it used to be something that was based on a future claim to profits. It's completely divorced itself from that. Now, what this exuberance and this excitement that we're seeing from the class of people who buy and participate in the stock market is the reality that they've seen that the Federal Reserve will do whatever is needed to make sure that asset prices stay as high as possible. One, with all of this, the massive amounts of money that the Federal Reserve has pumped into the financial markets initially, where could that money really go other than in the stock market, right? So of course people are going to be buying stocks with that money. Two, the Federal Reserve is now buying, corporate bonds, which is something it's never done before, and is a massive move. And you got to understand, one, that bonds aren't traditionally something that people jump into to make a lot of money off of, but over the past few weeks, they've become very much like hot commodities for folks. Bonds really, like, especially like the investment grade bonds, you buy them to hold for a really long time to just get a steady stream of income. People are seeing massive returns on these corporate bonds, because the Federal Reserve basically is going to go up and keep those prices as high as possible. That market's really shifting. And you have to understand like how critical debt is in the U.S. economy. Something that I talked about a lot on the Gem for like the past 2 years, and a lot of people were saying, well, that's not a problem, how big the corporate debt load has gotten, but it's starting to really hit a crisis level. So I just wanted to share this from Adam Tooze real quick. So these are the rising share of companies with debt servicing costs that are higher than their profits. I mean, if you really look at that line, it's an alarming rate that certainly growed after the initial recession 2008, but has grown exponentially.
That's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, but that's been the dynamic from the Federal Reserve's activity over the past 10 years to basically make it so easy to amass a significant amount of debt because they've kept interest rates so low. And now we basically have like a corporate economy that has just, is completely addicted to debt. And now the Federal Reserve is jumping into the bond market, which is not fundamentally changing that dynamic. We're in an ironic moment right now where the Federal Reserve Chair is demanding Congress, continue to do stimulus spending, which is not, it's not something that they've been pursuing. So here's the reality. There's two very different worlds. There's the world of the working class people, the people who get a paycheck, and that's how they, survive, and people who get all of their money from holding significant amounts of assets. And we've seen this massive institution, the Federal Reserve, step into becoming one of the most important players in the US economy. By the way, something that has very little democratic oversight, by the way, and is functioning in a way to make sure that the super rich and the people who have access to the Federal Reserve programs are on a completely different footing. So there's a complete decoupling from the lived reality of people who produce in the society and the people who extract profits through holding assets. So, we might see these kind of jumps up on the stock market, over the next couple of months, but there is no way to look at the actual material conditions of this US economy and say that it is anything that's stable. And I think even the stock market is going to have that realization over the next couple of months as you see these states that reopened and you see coronavirus cases spread in those communities, that a lot of those states are going to have to close down operations again. Because, we saw this retail growth recently, but that's just because a lot of states reopened. And now we're already seeing in states like Texas and in Florida, the coronavirus is spreading so much that there's going to have to be another likely round of lockdowns, or at least some kind of restrictions. But again, given the state of politics in this country, who really knows what the hell's going to happen there? But really, don't let anybody tell you that the economy is doing great, because we're looking at around 20% unemployment, largest amount of people pulling unemployment checks that has ever happened in U.S. history, and a massive viral pandemic that we still have no clear way out of. And we need to be sure that we're not listening to the people who led us into the crisis in 2008 now.
You sound like you read Rousseau coming out of Plato, man.
Probably.
I couldn't sleep the other night. I rewatched Big Lebowski. And it is like an
incredible movie. I was on a Coen Brothers kick. And Jeff Bridges, because I also watched True Grit, their version of True. It's an amazing movie. Thank you for Nando and Connor Kilpatrick were pushing me on that. I liked so much. I'm going to order the book. Independent bookseller.
Watch Hell or High Water if
Hell or High Water is a fantastic movie, but I already saw that. I actually saw Hell or High Water twice, but the scene in Big Lebowski, I don't even remember the context of it, but there's one that Jeff Bridges is like, that's just like your opinion, man. It's just like the perfect, so almost everything you hear today, you know. Like, I'm not gonna wear a fucking mask. It's just like your opinion, man. Just whatever.
You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.